Hi, everybody. David here. Before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to stop and recognize a major milestone. Can you believe it's been 1 year ago today, January 20th, 2025, I launched the Not Speeding Just Qualifying podcast. I started as a passion project to explore the world of motorsports, not just the main series that everyone's familiar with, but to introduce and educate listeners on new series across the world. It was a journey I stepped out on faith on, and safe to say, I'm glad I took that leap because it's grown into something I didn't even imagine. Over 50 episodes, numerous guests from NASCAR to sports cars, and interviewing drivers, team owners, and media insiders. Granted, this anniversary is a little bittersweet. For most of y'all who know me, I was hoping to be in Daytona for the Rolex 24 this year. It's the race, after all, that I collected the content to build the first episodes of my podcast in the first place. Unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond my control, I won't be able to be there in person this year. But as a true fan, I'll be watching on television, listening on the radio, and keeping up with the race like I always do. Despite the setback, I have plans to keep going, foot to the gas, full throttle, to keep producing content until spiritually I'm told not to anymore. In closing, I just want to say thank you to everyone that subscribed and listened to the show over the last year. Your support, your listens, your shares, your likes, they are truly appreciated, and I cannot say thank you enough for each of them. With that being said, today's episode will be a little bit longer than normal, but I promise it'll be worth it. Thanks for taking the time to hear me, and enough talk. Enjoy today's episode. Hop in, buckle up, and get ready to lay it on the line. This is Not Speeding, Just Qualifying, a podcast that's just as fast as it sounds. Hello, family. I'm David Lawrence, and welcome to the Not Speeding, Just Qualifying podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I got a question for you to start. Are you subscribed to us yet? If the answer is no, why not? Find us on YouTube and search us in the podcast section of the YouTube Music app. Search Not Speeding, Just Qualifying. Get access to our full library of episodes and be alerted when new episodes of the podcast come out. Subscribe today. You won't regret it. Today is race week, but not just any race week. It's a special one. So I invited some friends to talk some racing, and you're about to hear the end result. So without further ado, tune in your ears and enjoy our conversation. It is one of the biggest racing weeks of the season, especially here in North America. IMSA is back. We are kicking off the 2026 North American Motorsports season in earnest. This weekend is the 64th running of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. If you are listening to this on the day it drops on the Tuesday, we are fresh out of the Roar test weekend. So now we know kind of what people are playing with. So to help me break it down, I have a couple of people who will be very close to the action. If you have been in my podcast library, they are no strangers to this show. So without further ado, let's bring in the gang. Welcome back to the Not Speeding, Just Qualifying podcast. My good friends from IMSA Radio, Arjuna Kankipati and Myrehn. Top of the evening, fellas. How y'all doing?
Doing great. Good to be with you.
Excited for this weekend. Should be a good one.
Man, I cannot imagine. I think all of us, whether you are going to be in Daytona or not, are going to be absolutely excited. We got one heck of a field, so we're going to jump right into it, previewing this 64th Rolex 24 at Daytona. For those of you guys who are not familiar, four classes. We'll go from the bottom up to the top. We'll start with GTD, and by no means starting with the smallest and the least powerful class. By no means is it the smallest. It's actually the biggest class, 21 cars. And fellas, we got to begin with the defending champions, Winward Racing, the two-time defending series champions. They also won this race in 2024. And if you weren't watching the media reports out of the Roar, Mercedes looking very strong. Cars always near the top of the time charts throughout the weekend. Guys, Ryan, I'll start with you as you were there for the Roar watching the action for the most part. What's your outlook on the defending champs going into this Rolex?
Well, the championship clearly goes through Winward. They've established that not just last year, but the year before as well. And they've done it with consistency. They've typically done it by starting off with a big result at Daytona or at Sebring, or in some cases both. And then they've used that then to control the championship the rest of the way. They really haven't done much changing behind the scenes. The big thing for them is they're running a second car this weekend in the GTD PRO Class. They're actually using their DTM crew to crew that car this year, which is an interesting sidebar. But I don't think it'll distract from their main effort. It's a great lineup, a really strong team. They've been here. They've done it before. So I think the rest of the field has to look at them as a real contender once again. And you're right. They were quick in the Roar. I think maybe the Mercedes wasn't the standout performer of the Roar, but it was right there nipping at the heels of the Mustangs in particular that looked strong. Also had a good lap time out of Magnus and their Aston. So all of that taken together, I think it'll be extremely competitive. It'll be difficult for them to win, but you can't count them out. In fact, I think you have to put them on the short list as favorites to win the race.
And Arjuna, I'll bounce this one off you. Not much change. Lucas Auer, who was competing in GTD Pro last year, he comes in this time around to replace Daniel Myrehn, who of course has left the team. You got to think, even with that driver lineup, when we're definitely making them a case to look as strong as ever.
Grab pole in GTD back in 2022. So by no means does he come into this race with lack of credentials.
Absolutely.
And I think when it comes to Winward, the question really has to be, and just to set the expectations, I was working on some esports stuff this weekend in Europe, so I didn't get to pay too much attention to the Roar beyond the great notebooks from Sports Car 365 and Daily Sports Car. Wish I could have had the chance to listen to Ryan and Matt Yoakum. But I think when it comes to Winward, the consistency that we've seen from them in the last couple of years is what you've got to keep an eye on. Russell, I think you can make the argument, is one of the stronger non-professional drivers. I think that's the fairest way to describe him, because he's not an amateur anymore. Yes, he's juggling a bit more this weekend, running two cars. I'm sure that does add to his workload, but you know, they came back from 7 laps down last year to put themselves into contention. So, I mean, that's the great thing about IMSA. Keep yourself alive and go into the last hour within one lap of the lead, and you can win this race no matter what.
Top 5 at Daytona. They brought it to a Sebring win, and of course, that second straight consecutive championship. Guys, Ryan, you hinted at Mercedes not quite being the standout. To me, I think the standout of the Roar was Ford, particularly in the GTD category. Both their teams, Riley Myers, who of course was running LMP2 last year, they've now come down to GTD for this season. Gradient, last year, first year with the car, they're now in their second season, so a year familiarity for them. And they were both teams at or near the top of the charts. Corey Lewis, I think, topped one of the sessions, which was really a surprise for me. But with Ford, they're gonna be a factor, Ryan, as you mentioned. So drivers, teams of a car, which of those will be the X factor for Team Mustang coming into this Rolex 24?
probably is the car because it's a new Ford Mustang for 2026. It's the Evo package. So even though this ostensibly is the car that won in GTD Pro last year, it's not exactly the same. The front dive planes are the most noticeable visual difference on the car from a year before, but they've also done significant updates to their braking package and a lot of work to go into the drivability of the car. I think they were able to isolate a few things that they knew were shortcomings with the original car in its final homologation, and were able to dial in then some of the shortcomings and make them a little bit less of a weakness and perhaps even a strength moving forward. Although this has been a track that's been good. This style of track has been good for the old version of the Mustang. I think their thought was, let's make this car a little bit better on some of the tracks like Sebring, for instance, which they knew previously was going to be a struggle. The question is, does that come at a cost? Does that then hurt them at a track where they had been strong before, or do they keep some of those strong attributes plus add to that package? I'm really curious to see how that plays out, not just in GTD, as you mentioned with the two teams there, but GTD Pro as well with the factory cars.
Gotta believe that Ford definitely looking strong on all levels coming into this, like you said, GTD and GTD Pro. Arjuna, I want to come to you. Corvette are the defending champions. AWA, from our standpoint, I know we were up in the stands. You and me were actually caught you, and we had a conversation around early morning hours last year. And I think you and me can both say we were a little surprised to see AWA kind of in contention, because they really were nowhere, but came on to take the class win last year. This year, of course, they've rebadged. They're now 13 Autosport for 2026. And Corvette has some reinforcements. DXDT, excuse my bobble, they're back. And joining them, coming back to GTD from GTD Pro, Dragon Speed with Corv now adding to the Corvette brigade, and they got some pretty stacked drivers. Ben Green replaces Marvin Kirchhofer, who now gets the Corvette factory endurance call up for this year. Casper Stevenson, I found this fun. Arjuna, you mentioned Sports Car 365. They mentioned this will be Stevens' 7th different GT3 model he's driven for, and he's only 27, I think. I'm like, how do you drive that much in just a short amount of time? And then, of course, the big gun Scott McLaughlin, who raced in GTD Pro and Corvette last year. Outside of his IndyCar commitments, he's raced for Corvette. So him getting this DXDT call up for Daytona, not too big of a surprise. Arjuna, I'll make it as simple as you can. Can Corvette repeat? And if so, how can they?
I think yes, because Dragon Speed. What we saw from them last year in GTD Pro is nothing short of remarkable. And I really felt for Albert Costa and the entire team to come up short for Petit Le Mans. You could tell how much it meant to them. And, you know, that's a team that didn't test at any race last year and instead used iRacing to prepare, which sounds quite crazy when you can compare them to a Ford, a Corvette. You know, these are manufacturers that can put the resources to go and test at basically every track if they had the test days to do so. Giacomo Otoe was a star to me last year, a couple of pole positions. And, you know, he didn't do the full season, but when he was there, you could tell that he had the quality, the star quality as well. So I think Dragon Speed is not just one to watch for the Rolex, but one to watch for the full season. Cairoli, Hedman, Stevenson, and Altoe. That's a formidable lineup. And I'll put my fan cap on for a second. That DXDT lineup, great to see Scott McLaughlin after flying to Suzuka and being part of a couple of the Corvette drivers who got the chance to race in the Suzuka 1000, brings more experience back this year. So, you know, I think there are a couple of teams that Corvette, in GTD in particular, will be very, very excited to see flying there, Mark.
Oh, boy. Let's go on down. Let's move to the next class on our list, GTD Pro, 15 cars, and probably one of the bigger headlines that might have been kind of glossed under, not really, but we're making a big deal about it. McLaren returning with Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan for 2026. Ryan, you kind of hinted at this during the Roar coverage. Not absolutely 11th hour, but a fairly late deal came together after their BMW partnership ended. A young lineup, Max Esterson, Nikita Johnson, who did single-seater formula over in Europe last season. They're going to do the full season with the team. Yuri Vips, who ran with Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan, and IndyCar. He's going to do the Enduros. Dean McDonald, McLaren factory driver, who does Europe primarily. He'll be in. All four of them Rolex rookies. A very interesting note. Ryan, despite an experienced team in Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan, will the newness of the car kind of be their downfall from them trying to contend a little bit more?
I would say it's the lack of experience in this race that is more likely to be the downfall than the car or the team at this stage. The team certainly knows its way around long-distance races. The McLarens run in enough of them now that the folks from McLaren probably can prepare the car to go the distance. But when you have three drivers forming part of this lineup, three-quarters of this lineup, with a combined one sports car start. All right, that was Max Esterson at Motul Petit Le Mans last year, and that was in a different class, in a different type of car. Those three have one sports car start between them. Then you have Dean McDonald, who knows the car extremely well. I have to believe he's a massive asset to Rahal Letterman Lanigan. I think there was some thought that maybe Graham Rahal would drive in this race, but I'm not exactly sure which seat that would have filled. I'm glad, though, that they have Dean to help them go into this event with at least somebody with a notebook on the car previously. I'm not concerned about him necessarily, but he's not done the IMSA rule set before, right? Same with the others that have a limited experience in IMSA. So if they're going to have problems, I suspect it'll be due to the lack of experience in this race and in IMSA specifically for the lineup. That's not to say they can't have a good day, though. It wouldn't be a total surprise. They were pretty quick, actually, in some of the Roar test sessions. So I wouldn't count them out entirely, but it is a big hill to climb.
I believe Exerson topped one of the Friday sessions, if my brain remembers correctly. Arjuna, let me come over to you. One team that got to be very high on your meter, if for no other reason the talent alone, is 75 Express. Kenny Habul has put an all-star lineup together. Mercedes factory driver Mauro Engel, two-time IndyCar champion and former Indy 500 winner in Will Power. And then to top it all off, the recently crowned Supercars champion in the form of Chaz Mostert makes his Rolex debut. Arjuna, how excited, not to mention these guys were fast at the Roar as well. Like we said, Mercedes, they can be quite you never know. They were good, but not all the way there package. But how excited are you just for this 75 Express squad?
I'm excited, but I'm also cautious because the last time we saw this outfit was at Indianapolis, where it's great to see Brock Feeney also get the chance to jump over into IMSA. But
yes,
boy, did they have nothing but bad luck. And so I'm just hoping they can kind of steady the ship, because that's ultimately all they really need with that sort of a driver lineup and so much experience. Although in different ways. Kenny brings maybe a bit more of the endurance racing background. This is Will Power's second 24-hour race, and the last one he did was 20-something years ago, Bathurst, in I think a Porsche GT3 Cup car. So very different experience. There is no comparison, actually, really, between a 24-hour race at Bathurst with the cars they had back then and what we have now. So I think that's going to be a very chaotic race for GTD Pro in particular, because of how stacked the lineup is. And so, I'll be curious how the night hours go and how they enter the morning, and if they've still got a chance.
And definitely going to be a headline to watch out for. Real quick, Porsche. Haven't seen a lot of them near the top during the Roar. Strong teams with AO, and then the debut of the legendary Manti outfit in GTD. And it wasn't just GTD Pro, but it was also the GTD teams as well. Real quick, can both of y'all chime in on this one? Where is your concern level for Porsche's GT efforts going into this week's race?
Good question. I don't know that I'm concerned, but you're right. They haven't flexed a whole lot of muscle up to this point, at least based on the time charts and testing. the old adage is not to pay too much attention to testing time. So I suppose I'm going to do that here, although I'm contradicting myself because I was pointing to it earlier. I suppose if you're quick in testing, that's probably a good sign. If you're slow, it's not necessarily a bad sign. I haven't had a chance to talk to any of the Porsche teams, so I can't weigh in too much. But do remember, this is another car that's gone through an Evo since we saw it here at Daytona last. So to some degree, I think those teams were probably trying to see if what they did before still works with the changes that have been done to the car, how much of the setup philosophy carries over, and how much they need to adjust on the fly.
Arjuna?
And I guess echoing Ryan's points on how to judge much this early from just times and it being a new car. I mean, at the end of the day, looking at GTD Pro in particular, the lineups that Porsche has, it is crazy. Of course, there were lots of questions about how the Porsche Penske shakeup was going to land some of those drivers. But with Nick Tandy paired up with Harry King for the full season, if anyone's going to replace Lauren Heinrich and Klaus Bachler in that lineup, it seems like this is a pretty good swing of things. And a couple of the comments that I've heard Nick make as well, it sounds like he needs the kind of change that Dane Cameron needed as well. And so maybe it's the perfect place for him to land up. And then looking at Manthey, I'm very bullish on them. Ian Changuven, that pass to win his DTM championship, I mean, that is the stuff that legends are made of. I mean,
yes.
I mean, there's some words that I've shared with Freds. That is the ballsiest move that I've ever seen in modern sports car racing. I don't think we see that kind of stuff anymore. So just imagine if it's Ian Chan in that car at the very end. He was part of the Wright Motorsport effort last year that ran pretty well as well. So, I think AO Racing, Manthey, we've got a pretty good lineup for the Porsche fans.
Let's hope Porsche proves me wrong in this case. Up to LMP2, 13 cars was 14, but we lost the team Tony's Orica, unfortunately. The two biggest teams I got here, United Autosports versus TDS Racing. United, of course, inherited the win after Tower Motorsports was disqualified last year. But their number 2 car with new signing Mikkel Jensen as a farming year for the hypercar program, that car definitely fast during the roar. TDS Racing, revised lineup, Toby Lukey, David Heinemer Hansen coming over from ERA. Of course, they've won the last 2 races the last 2 years. They haven't been able to put together for Daytona. For both of you all, is it seeming like a United versus TDS, or is it just one of those LMP2s just a little bit too wide open?
I hate to disagree with you, David, but I actually think that it's going to be interesting what happens with TDS because it's a big change. As a software engineer by day, I always love seeing Toby and David in the car, but fundamentally that's 2 amateur drivers. David's got a resume that compares against many real-world professionals, but that's always more difficult to manage in a 24-hour race. So compared to some of the efforts that we've seen with what was a very strong TDS lineup last year, now losing Stephen Thomas, Hunter McElrea also moving over to United, like you said, I think United's one to watch. I think Into Europol, though, is the one that I would point to a little bit more with.
I like it.
Tom Dillman coming back, Jeremy Clark as well, but adding Antonio Felix da Costa, I don't know about you, Ryan, but maybe it's United versus Into Europol to me.
How can we not talk about the reigning champs, right?
Absolutely.
AO Racing, and they're now Gold Spike the Dragon. I think they have to be in consideration. Brian Herta Autosport, new team, but it's in conjunction with PR1 Matheson, which just a couple of years ago helped Inter Europol win an IMSA championship in LMP2. They've got a really strong lineup. Pratt and Miller looking a lot stronger this year than they did this time last year. They were really stout over the course of 3 days of testing at the Roar. And you could just keep going on and on. I don't know that I could pick a favorite in LMP2. It's wide open. And what I love about this class is a lot of it does come down to the performance of the bronze drivers. And it's the nature of a bronze driver is even the good ones will make a mistake or two from time to time. So who avoids those crucial mistakes that then sets the pros up for that thrilling run to the finish that we seem to see every year in LMP2?
If we can just get another photo finish, I think it was 2024, I think we'll be in absolute heaven. All right, we've made our way to the top of the ladder, the 11-car GTP lineup. Of course, everyone's talking about the big debut of the Aston Martin Valkyrie. They had respectable speed at the Roar. However, they did lose time. They weren't out for the second half of Saturday due to an engine change. Ryan, real quick, how much does the lost track time hurt their chances of a strong result? And what can be seen as a respectable result for them in their Rolex debut?
It is a setback, for sure, but I would say relative to other teams debuting a car, they're probably better placed to deal with that than most because they did go through all the preseason testing last year, not the Roar, but all the official testing ahead of last year, even though they didn't make their race debut until Sebring. So they have a lot of running time at Daytona. At this point, they know the car really well, having run it, 2 of them, in the World Endurance Championship last year, and then 1 for every IMSA race except for Daytona last year. So I think they'll be okay as far as the time lost due to the engine change is concerned. I think the question is, where does it fit with BOP? Remember, this is the first time IMSA's had to BOP an LMH car at Daytona. So there's going to be a little bit of learning on the fly with that. People often talk about the fact that the BOP at Daytona is totally different than what you get the rest of the season because the track is so different from all the rest of them on the calendar. I think if they run cleanly, they have a really good chance to finish in the top half of the field, maybe sniff the podium if things go the right way, but it's going to take a clean run. And the typical thing for them is they just have the one car. So if one little thing pops up, they don't have a second bullet in the chamber. That's a lot of pressure on getting that one car to run a full 24 hours problem-free, never mind what all the rest of the cars in the field are doing and how that could potentially affect them as well.
Arjuna, let me bring up Acura. They weren't at the top, but they just seemed a little off during the war. They didn't really make a lot of headlines, but you got that strong all-star driver lineup. Kakuota back from Super Formula and Super GT. Alex Palou and Scott Dixon. Sir Scott Dixon, we need to make sure we put the Sir in front of him now. And AJ Allmendinger back at the Rolex 24. First time in a while since we've seen old Dinger back. Are we panicking or worrying about Acura yet, despite not making a lot of noise over the weekend?
No, because I think it's a car that's also seen plenty of change in the off-season, right? I think Acura and Cadillac have brought maybe less visually striking changes than BMW to their respective GTP entries. And so I think when we talk about Acura, we have to talk about last year and the fact that the 93 in particular was being engineered by Honda Racing staff members. And so it kind of completed the feedback loop. That was what we were talking about a lot. It allowed those that developed the car to go and see during race weekends where the needed improvements would be. And so you would hope heading into the new year that they've been able to use all this testing time to get to grips with those changes as well, having had another chance to run through that feedback loop. So I'm not too worried about Acura. And the driver lineup, I think, gives them a lot of experience to fall back on. There are a couple of lineups here where there are 3 drivers. And for 24 hours, I'm very much of the opinion you want that extra driver. There was a social media post that went out yesterday, some drivers saying they didn't get any sleep during a 24-hour race. I don't believe that because I can only imagine how adrenaline dump tired you must be at the end of the stint. So yeah, having more drivers, I think, is always better, especially with the experience they have.
Absolutely. And last but not least, and I'll have both y'all chime in briefly on this one, Porsche and Cadillac, they were the class of the Roar. The Evo updates, they appear to be falling right in line. Simple question, is this Rolex, Porsche, or Cadillac's race to lose?
Well, I think you start with Porsche because they've won the last couple, right? So if you're going to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. I don't know that I say that necessarily based on what we saw in testing alone, but it's hard to win this thing twice in a row, let alone 3 times in a row. It would be an amazing achievement if Porsche Penske was able to do so. The standout from the Porsche camp to me, though, is what the customer team, JDC Miller, was able to do. They were consistently matching the factory cars across just about every one of the test sessions. And what's notable about that is while Porsche has rolled out updates through the Evo Joker process to their 963. The JDC Miller car is not using those. They're running in the previous generation spec for various reasons. So that was really eye-opening. That's a young lineup without a lot of experience. Tymon Vanderhelm, believe it or not, is probably the experienced hand at the tiller, and he's only done this a couple of years. So that's one question mark I have about that team. But on raw pace alone, it seems like they're closer to the factory cars than they have been maybe ever in their time running a 963. And to close, my takeaway from the Cadillac camp is Wayne Taylor Racing seems to have figured something out. They were matching Action Express throughout the course of the Roar, whereas last season, in the team's return to the General Motors fold, they were a far cry from the other Cadillac from Action Express. It doesn't seem like there's that gulf. Again, testing times being what they are, don't want to read too much into it, but perhaps this could be a signal that Wayne Taylor Racing is ready to reclaim some of the ground that it staked out several years ago when it was so good in this race in particular.
Johnny, do you agree?
I did a social media thing, I filmed it today, where I was talking about GTP, and I was very much talking about the momentum that Wayne Taylor Racing picked up at the end of last year. Obviously, Action Express won Motul Petit Le Mans, and the emotion on display, I think, told you a lot about what it meant to the team. And so hopefully Wayne Taylor Racing have built on what they have learned from that car last year, because it's clearly a quick car. Porsche, the driver lineup changes are very fascinating. I'm a big Lauren Heinrich fan, so I think that 7, it's going to be a very quick car, but you can't look past the 6. Evan Estra, Lawrence Vantor, Matt Campbell. I mean, that is a star lineup. And to just quickly touch on JDC, I know a lot of people questioned the introduction of Max Esterson for the end of last season. I was not one of those people, having seen him come from the world of iRacing, and he proved a lot of people wrong. John Church clearly has an eye for talent, and yes, there are some realities with the privateer teams. You need to bring a driver with budget, but they have clearly found drivers that work with them and work for their program. So as much as they are campaigning a year-old car, I think I'm very excited to see what is the sole true privateer entry left now in this class, to see what they can do for the entirety of 2026.
All right. Real quick, I got to put you guys on the spot. It's 1:40 Sunday afternoon. Checker flags flown on the 64th Rolex 24. Guys, you know me by now. Y'all know I have a habit of doing this. You guys are running to the victory circle. Name your 4 class winners. Arjuna, I'll kick it off with you.
Oh, you tortured me first. For the record, I do this as well on sim racing broadcasts. I force my other commentators to give me answers, and then I don't say it myself. I think I can't look past Porsche Penske as much as I don't want to look into testing times. Lauren Vantor, Kevin Estra, Matt Campbell, I think the 6 gets it done. Although I just said earlier, I think 4 drivers is better. I think those 3 drivers get it done. Into Europol, the 43, I think they'll get it done. They've also got 2 entries as a team, so maybe that helps them a little bit as well. GTD is a wild card. I have genuinely no idea. And so why don't I just go with the slightly emotional pick and say the 14 Lexus Vassar Sullivan crew, pairing Jack Hawksworth back up with Ben Barnacle, include Carl Kirkwood in that as well. That's a pretty strong lineup. In the last year of the RCF, that's a decade now that car has been out there and running. So you hope they've got the most of it to drag it out for one more year. And last but not least, in GTD, I can't look past Winward Racing. I think it's very, very difficult given what they've done in the last couple of years. So our defending champions of the series, I think they get another Rolex on their wrist as well.
All right, Ryan, you've had a chance to think about it. Who are you for?
Okay, predictions sure to go wrong here. We'll start with the number 40 Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac. So how about Jordan Taylor, Louis Delatraz, and Colton Herta? Yeah, teaming up for an overall Rolex win. LMP2, a team we didn't even talk about when we talked about LMP2. CrowdStrike by APR. They've been close before. George Kurtz is solid as a bronze. Maltha Jakobsen, Alex Quinn, Toby Sowery. It's a pretty good lineup there. In GTD, I was tempted to go the Vassar Sullivan route as well for GTD Pro. So you're going to make me pivot, and I'll go to Risi. How about the return of Risi Competizione? This is a great lineup. Alessandro Pierguidi, Davide Rigon, Daniel Serra. Risi knows how to engineer a Ferrari. Rick Mayer up on the timing stand. So that would be a fairy tale story, too, in their return to the championship. Okay, GTD. This is the one I hadn't settled on yet. So I'm scrolling through the entry list here, trying to come up with something compelling, and I'm struggling. Boy. I love how hard it is. That is what? Okay. Why don't we do Vassar Sullivan here, since I was deprived of that pick in pro? But we've got Esteban Masson, Frankie Montecalvo, Benjamin Peterson, Aaron Tiewitz. Definitely an underdog selection. I'm really not entirely sure what's giving me the confidence to go this direction, but here we go. There's the kiss of death to those four poor crews. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, for me, you mentioned Aston Martin had a little bit of quickness, but I'm not going to go with Magnus. Give me Heart of Racing, Tom Gamble, Eduardo Barrichello, Zachary Robichon, Mattia Drury, a lot of experience there for GTD. In GTD Pro, how about back-to-back in different classes? Give me the number 3 Corvette, Antonio Garcia, Alexander Sims, and in his Corvette Racing factory debut for Pratt Miller, Marvin Kirchhofer, I think can pull something out. Corvette always has a way of surprising us there. In LMP2, since you guys left me spike, you know what? Why not? Dane Cameron, PJ Hyatt, Johnny Edgar, Christian Rasmussen, fresh off his first IndyCar win last season, by the way. Sorry, Tower Motorsports. I got to see a little bit more if you guys want me to say you guys will take the flag and keep it. And winning the 64th Rolex 24 at Daytona. Give me Action Express to go 3 in a row. And maybe it's the Connor Zillett story, seeing him in that car. But Jack Aiken, Earl Bamber, Frederick Vesti, they're a well-oiled team. I can't see him going against it. And then, of course, the talented Connor Zillett. Why not? Especially with Cadillac being a strong with the Evo. Guys, it has been a lot of fun as always. If you're not able to watch the Rolex 24 Saturday, Sunday on NBC and Peacock, if you're listening to us outside the United States, you can listen to Ryan, Arjuna, John Heindorf, and the rest of the IMSA Radio team. Full 24 hours, no commercial breaks, nonstop, the entire race on the IMSA YouTube channel. And for those of us in the United States who prefer to listen, you can listen to them on IMSA Radio. And oh, by the way, the IMSA Radio feed will be available on Sirius XM satellite radio. Ryan, Arjuna, pleasure as always. Thank you guys so much for the time.
Thanks, my friend.
All right, everyone. That concludes this week's episode. Do you have an idea for a show or a series you would like for us to cover? Send us an email, dalmotorsports@gmail.com. Again, dalmotorsports@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you by email or through our social media channels, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, Threads. We're all at the same handle at NSJQ Podcast. And like we said at the beginning of the show, just another reminder, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and YouTube Music so that way whenever new episodes of the pod drop, you will be the first to know. Lastly, if you want to follow me on my personal social media handles, links to those will be in the description box to this episode. Also, if you want to follow Ryan or Arjuna on their social media channels to keep up during race week, I'll drop the links to their social medias in the description box as well. We'll catch you all next time for another episode of Not Speeding, Just Qualifying, a podcast that goes just as fast as it sounds. I'm David Lawrence, and until next time, you're not living life to the fullest until you're going flat out. Enjoy the Rolex 24. So long, everyone.